Yeah, a little bit different this weekend, coming to you from Monza, Italy. More on that in a moment. Just an update on what happened in Abu Dhabi today. A little bit of an anticlimax, really. Lots of young drivers, nothing wrong with that, new drivers in FP1, notably Isaac Hadjar in Max Verstappen's car, and definitely not as a one-off. Brilliant to see Jack Doohan in the Esteban Ocon Alpine Renault actually racing this weekend, so he's making his Grand Prix debut. Not before time, very talented young Australian. But anyway, yeah, lots of stand-ins, if you like, in FP1. So when Max Verstappen got into his Red Bull RB20 for FP2, he said, "What's happened to the front axle? No grip at the front. What's going on?" And so he spent most of the session just trying to get the understeer out of the car. Nothing to do with Isaac Hadjar, I'm sure, but nonetheless, not very happy. But I say it was an anticlimax because news broke before the beginning of FP2 that Charles Leclerc, who of course is spearheading Ferrari's attempt to try to win the 2024 Constructors World Championship, has incurred a 10-place grid penalty. I'll repeat that, 10-place grid penalty. Not unusual because it's a power unit thing, it's a battery pack thing. And so, yeah, unless something goes radically wrong now, it's an easy cakewalk for McLaren-Mercedes to secure this 2024 Constructors Championship. And of course, that is very much deserved. Two sides of that. One is so good, amazing that Lando didn't get a little bit closer in the Drivers' Championship, but we've talked enough about that. But here they are on the brink of clinching the Constructors' World Championship and 1-2 in practice for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix finale. Lando Norris just ahead of Oscar Piastri, 23.5 to Oscar's 23.7 on soft tyres, very quick on long runs as well. Nico Hülkenberg, third quickest for Haas Ferrari. I suppose, you know, given how well that team has gone this year, that's a pretty good result for them, isn't it? Just underlines how well they've done this year, 23.9. Carlos Sainz, the quicker of the two Ferrari drivers, 24.0 already. I presume Charles Leclerc's side of the garage thinking more about the race rather than anything else. 10-place grid penalty. I mean, it's just such a handicap that Ferrari must now be very debilitated. Lewis Hamilton, fifth quickest, 24.1. George Russell, 24.5. And then a bunch of cars on 24.2. Charles Leclerc, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, Alex Albon, the usual suspects, you could kind of say. And then a massive number of cars all bunched there for P10, including Max Verstappen, led by Yuki Tsunoda. So as I say, a bit of an anticlimactic day and potentially going to be an anticlimactic weekend as well. In the absence of a Drivers' World Championship, there's been a lot of billing for this Constructors face-off. But at the moment, as it stands, it's going to be very, very difficult for Ferrari. And so moving on from that, I think this is a very good moment to catch up with Pirelli, to talk to them about some of the contentious moments of 2024, but equally how well things have gone for them from their perspective. Bear in mind, touch wood, under this cap, there have been no real issues with the tyres this year, and it's been a pretty good year all round in terms of close and competitive racing. So I caught up with Mario Isola, and I'm going to talk a little bit more tomorrow as well about 2025 and 2026. But this is Mario and I having a chat a little bit earlier about how 24 has gone from his perspective. Mario, we are at the end now of the season, and I just wondered if I could get you to look back a little bit at some of the key moments, how things have gone from your point of view. Always a little bit of a question mark, how the tyres are going to go. I guess you don't do as much testing as you'd really want. So how did 25 work out for you?
If you talk about testing and you talk with my engineers, they are never happy with the amount of tests we have available. But I believe that now we have a good situation, a good compromise with the teams. I understand how difficult it is for the teams to give us a car, a driver, and a crew to run a car. Is a long season, 24 races, the longest in the Formula One history, I believe. So I'm very grateful to the teams for providing us cars and people to run the test. We have been not very lucky this year because we were planning some wet tests that turned to be dry, and we're planning some dry tests that turned to be wet. But unfortunately, we cannot control the weather. But I believe that we have now a good situation for 2025. But coming back to 2024, we had a great season. We have a great season. It's a long time we don't have 3-4 teams fighting for the Constructor Championship with many different drivers. How many winners we had this season? I believe probably more than 8. I didn't make a calculation, but we didn't have a domination of only one driver. That's exactly what spectators want to see, and so from our side, tires were working well. We had many races with a two-stop strategy and different strategies. We were faster than last year. Performance of the cars is incredible, and obviously we had also the possibility to understand how our product works and where we can improve it.
Well, I've got to take my hat off to you, and I'm touching wood now under my hat, which is that you didn't, as far as I can see, you didn't actually have any real issues with the tires either, in terms of problems with the tires. We've seen that in the past. I know how difficult it is as a monopoly supplier to have to try to avoid that and nonetheless be competitive and build great tires. And that's all credit to you for that.
Thank you. All credit to the team that is working in developing the tires. They did a great job since the introduction of the 18-inch. I believe it was a big step in the right direction. These cars the performance of this car is crazy. Sometime when we received a simulation from the teams before an event, we say they are probably overestimating the level of load on tires and so on.
Can you give us an idea of the numbers?
We are talking about more than, sometime more than 1,400 kilos on a single tire. So you can imagine the level of stress, vertical and lateral stress. These cars are different from the previous generation because this downforce package is able to generate more and more downforce with the speed. While in the past, the wings were at a certain point, they were not generating additional downforce. Now, especially on the high-speed corners, the level of downforce is crazy. And it's all on tires, basically. So we have data from the teams. So we had the possibility to replicate the stress on a number of methodologies that we're running with our indoor test department that obviously is giving us feedback on how the tires then operate on track. But the amount of stress, the amount of energy that those cars are putting on tires is much, much, much higher than in the past. Don't forget the cars are heavier. So when we compare a lap time from 2024 with a lap time from 2006, for example, and we say, it's just close to 2006. Yes, but the cars at that time were 200 kilos lighter. And 200 kilos on a Formula One car means, 7 seconds probably or something like that. So it's really the technology that is on these cars is unbelievable. And therefore the stress they put on tires. In Qatar, we were simulating a pole position time 2 seconds faster than last year. And we said, okay, 2 seconds seems a bit too much. Actually, they were 3.5 seconds quicker last year. So you can imagine the difference in tire stress is incredible.
Can you give us any idea of the sorts of materials you're using now in the belt and the sidewall?
Unfortunately, not for confidentiality, but what I can tell you is that we are always committed to develop new materials because we need to increase the durability, the resistance of the materials without increasing the weight. Sometimes we increase the weight by 100 grams, 200 grams, and the teams are shouting at this because they don't want to add weight to the tires. But we need to make a tire that is super resistant, and obviously without increasing the weight is difficult. That's why the development of the material is really important, and it's really useful also for the company, because we find materials that we can use also on other application, on GT tires, but also ultra high performance road tires like the P0 Trofeo, for example. So this is an example of technology transfer that we have from Formula One to road tires. That is very important, that it is in the material. The level of details in any element of the tires is unbelievable. Not just, I mean, the textile that we use in the carcass is important, but also the compound, the topping compound that is putting all the cords together. Because if you have a laceration of the topping compound, the additional resistance of the material is useless. So it's all playing a part in this equation.
Sometimes I think, and maybe just the light, but sometimes we see the color coating on the sidewall coming off a little bit during the run. Is that correct? And if so, what causes that?
Sometimes it's because they brush a little bit at the tires, especially on street circuits, on the walls, or there are small contacts, or also the heat that you can generate into the tire can cause a sort of aging of the labels. We are working to improve that to avoid that we have this change in color. It's just an aesthetic effect.
I'm just going to mention three things, if you can just quickly respond to them, to do with 2024. One is tire warmers by regulation now not doing the job they used to do. How do you feel that's going? Obviously, we had some tire warming issues at various races, but I guess that's what they want, right?
I believe that 70 degrees is a good compromise between removing completely the tire warmers and the previous situation where we were heating tires at more than 100 degrees. We usually don't struggle with warm-up phase. The drivers, obviously each driver would like to have a tire ready from turn one. In the outlap, that's not possible. They have to warm the tire, as it happens in many other championships, like Formula 2, Formula 3, or others. And it's just a matter for them to get used to the situation. But I believe that 70 degrees now it's okay for slick tires.
Changing tires in a red zone, it got a lot of publicity in Brazil, obviously. We know inside Formula One the reasons for doing that, but how do you react to that now? Do you think there'll be any changes in the future to that rule?
It was discussed, because clearly it's important that they have the possibility to change the tires in case of red flag. Usually you have a red flag when there is an incident and there is debris on track. So you can have tires from other competitors not involved in the accident with the small cuts that can create an issue with the integrity of the tire. So it's important that we keep the possibility to change the tires. There is an ongoing discussion on the fact they have to use the same compound or not. That was discussed at the SAC meeting, and I believe a final position is still not decided, but there is an ongoing discussion.
And finally, just for 2024, some of the drivers have been quite critical of the tires on the radio in the heat of the moment. This compound, that compound feels different to another compound. I hope I understand your position completely, and I'm impressed by how tolerant you guys are. But is there any truth in any of that? Is there more disparity between some compounds within a compound, one type of tire within a compound than another this year more than ever before, or not?
We have to remind that the allocation is random and is defined by the FIA. So it's really impossible for us to make a different tire. And from the beginning of our experience in Formula One, we decided to check each batch of compound, each batch of material very carefully and in small quantities. So we have a quality control system that is really guaranteeing us that all the tires are the same. They are producing the same batch to avoid any difference. Also in aging, for example, you can have a small difference depending on the blanket strategy from each team. how much they keep the tires in blanket could, let's say, cause a small difference in the final performance, but that's very, 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 very small. They cannot change the behavior of the tire with the blankets. The point is that this year we had several times 20 drivers in 1 second in qualifying, and not like in the past 3-4 seconds or someone close to the 107% exclusion zone. And when you have all the drivers in 1 second and maybe 3-4 drivers in 1/10 of a second, then the attention to each single detail is close to paranoia, I would say, because it's really can make a difference in the result of the qualifying session as well as in the pace for the race. Tires have some characteristics, so they have to degrade because that was required by Formula One to have an average of 2 stops per race. And if you don't have degradation, there is no reason to change the tires. So also the preparation of the tire is important, the outlapping qualifying or the preparation lap as they call it sometime. How you manage the tires at the beginning of the stint during the race, especially at the start of the race when the car is heavy. If you initiate the degrading or not, if you overheat the tire or not, if you balance the car in the proper way or you overstress one axle, because sometimes it's difficult to balance the front axle with the rear axle and keep the tires in the right working window, all the 4 tires in the right working window. That's why drivers are complaining sometimes about the tires. I don't feel good with this set. I want another set. I want a medium. I want the hard, and so on. They are in competition. They are fighting for a position, and it's understandable that in the heat of the moment, they are complaining about something, and the tires are the only part of the car that is touching the ground.
Mario, top man. Big thanks to him for his time, and very diplomatic at the end, I thought, probably more than the driver's concern deserved. But as I say, there'll be more of that chat with Mario tomorrow when he looks ahead to 2025, what we might expect there, even more cornering load, probably, and then into 2026 and how quick those cars will be around corners. And of course, they are definitely going to be quicker in a straight line as well with the active aero. So just to finish on a completely different note, a kind of Red Bull-centric note, Red Bull having won the Drivers' World Championship, Max having won his 4th World Championship. Pleased to announce that I now have a special arrangement with Amalgam Models, makers of these most unbelievable renditions of detailed Red Bull cars and parts of cars, all models, amazing, some of them full size, as you can see from the steering wheel, just fabulous. Every detail is specific to a specific car on a specific day at a specific race in different scales, and just blows your mind when you see it, really. So I have this special arrangement, and here is the code that you can use for your special price on an Amalgam Red Bull model. Big thanks to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and to Track Ninja, and of course to you for watching. See you tomorrow. As we said yesterday, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the final round of the 2024 Formula One World Championship, now weighted very much in favour of McLaren-Mercedes. And for Ferrari, it went from bad to worse. Charles Leclerc already has that 10-place grid penalty. Now, his fastest lap in Q2 was deleted due to a track limits infringement coming out of turn 1. It wasn't a massive drama. It was just 2 wheels over the white line, just over the white line. Pretty Charles Leclerc, but nonetheless, it was there. So he lost that lap. It would have put him P1 at the time, and he would easily have got into Q3, obviously. But now he's starting from the back of the grid because it's a 10-place grid penalty plus deletion, didn't get out of Q2. And for Ferrari now, a very, very steep uphill battle to take the Constructors Championship to McLaren, because we have, as I say, the McLaren-Mercedes on the front row, Lando Norris ahead of Oscar Piastri again, and Ferrari on upheld by Carlos Sainz, who qualified P3, a little bit reversal of roles, as I've been saying in recent times. You would imagine that it would be the Ferrari driver that's being fired and this is his last race, who would be doing a few track limits things and maybe not getting through into Q3, but not. It's Carlos Sainz looking polished and professional and right on top of what he's doing to uphold Ferrari honour. And it's Charles Leclerc making a mistake like that in Q2. Yeah, not his fault, of course, that he has that 10-place grid penalty in addition to that, but it does mean that for McLaren-Mercedes, it's only things that can go wrong now that can rob them of this 2024 Constructors World Championship. Great pole by Lando Norris over Oscar Piastri. Piastri's looked quick over the first 1.5 days through into FP3. Slightly more ragged always than Lando Norris. And today, comparing the two, it was Oscar very, very good in Sector 1, using all the road and a little bit more. One moment he got a track limit thing, but then it was reinstated. It was that close. Whereas Lando paced the lap probably a little bit better, as it turned out, in terms of how to use a new set of Pirelli soft tyres. He wasn't quite as quick in Sector 1, but then he had the grip in Sector 2 and certainly Sector 3, where there are more slow corners. And as ever in Formula 1, it was the slower corners that actually put the pole lap together, and Lando sussed that out really well and managed the tyres incredibly well, I thought. So on the front row, you could say two extremes there. You got Lando doing that very, very well, very good on the slow corners. And you got Oscar out there putting the car on the limit, maybe overstretching the tyres a little bit. But that's good, you know, to have both drivers pushing the car like that. The only thing I would say, as I've been saying for a long time, is that when you see McLaren's domination now and you think about the races they've won this year and how they've won them, you still think, wow, how did Lando manage to lose the Drivers' Championship in Vegas? You know, and it comes back, of course, as I said, to the way they managed Lando from the Hungarian Grand Prix onwards. In a car that good, he should still be in the running for the Drivers' Championship going into this final day of the 2024 World Championship, but he isn't, and that's it. And all talk, of course, is of the Constructors' Championship. And as I say, you know, McLaren can only lose it now. So Carlos P3, P4, Nico Hülkenberg, unbelievable in the Haas Ferrari. What's he doing up there? Kevin Magnussen didn't get out of Q2, and there's Nico, just quick every time he went out. Good balance, good grip. I was doing a live stream not so long ago, and somebody said, "Oh, you know, why have Nico Hülkenberg's performances dropped off ever since they announced he was going to Sauber?" Well, you know, they haven't, and he's out there doing a brilliant job. And what a way to sign off with the team. Both drivers obviously leaving Haas at the end of the year, and well, at the end of this race, after this race. So yeah, wow, what a performance for him! Excellent. Max Verstappen was only 5th for Red Bull, did a very good job, like Lando, in the way Lando ran qualifying and certainly how he ran Q3 and put the lap together. Very good management as well from Max and Red Bull to not do 2 runs in Q2, to go out on a new set on the first run in Q2 and then just sit in the garage. A little bit of nail biting because it was close in Q2, but he sailed through, particularly with Charles Leclerc's time being deleted, and got into Q3. And that left Max with the only driver with 2 new sets going into Q3. So he gave himself every opportunity. And on his first set, he was quickest, everybody else on a used set. Then on the second set, he wasn't quite as quick on the overall lap. He was pretty good sectors 1 and 3, not bad. Obviously not going to be in Lando's class in terms of the way the car was going to manage the tyres in sector 3. And in sector 2, he caught Valtteri Bottas, who'd made it through to Q3. Get onto that in a second. And Valtteri wasn't going quickly. He was just sort of doing a perfunctory lap and caught him just at the braking zone going into the corner at the end of the straight, and just had to compromise his braking a little bit. So sector 2, he lost time with that, and that was that. So if we're going to have some sort of conclusion at the end of the year here, going into the race, it is that McLaren have finished about where they've been most of the second half of the year, which is a definite grip and balance advantage over Red Bull. And Mercedes had another very average day. George Russell qualified only 7th. Lewis Hamilton, for traffic and other reasons, didn't get out of Q1. So in terms of the McLaren versus Red Bull status of where they are going into the winter now, McLaren definitely have the advantage in terms of understanding the car, the grip, the balance versus top speed, and obviously aero efficiency as well. So quite a lot of work obviously for Red Bull ahead. They've made progress, but that car of Max Verstappen still very, very edgy to drive. As we saw at the end of his lap, he'd basically used up all the tyres by the time he got to the last corner, and the rear just went like that, and he was on opposite lock. on the runoff area on the curb. So it's not a track deletion corner, so it was no issue in that sense. But it was a big moment because he stayed on the power because he wanted the lap, obviously, and gave it a little bit too much correction, as you would when it's a bit rough on a runoff area like that. And the car snapped back the other way, and that was the beauty of that moment so far as watching Max at work is concerned, because he was very near the wall on the inside. The car snapped back to the inside and he just held it perfectly and just went straight over the start finish line. But really big moment for Max there. I can see several Formula One drivers, lesser drivers than that, who would have overcorrected there and possibly hit the wall doing that. Really, really nice bit of driving by Max, given the way the car lost grip going into the last corner, or he went in a little bit too quickly or whatever it was. He talked a little bit about maybe I should have opened or closed the steering a little bit more. Quite sure what I know what he means. It probably means if I was turning in on the brakes, I should have done the opposite, and if I was turning in a little bit later, I should have gone in on the brakes. Whatever it wasn't right. Anyway, Max qualified 5th. He'll be disappointed with that. He gave it everything, and it's quite significant, I think, isn't it? As we again prepare for 2025 now, thinking ahead already for 2025, it's quite significant that this guy has now won 4 World Championships. Every reason to sort of relax a little bit, as we've often seen in the past with drivers who've clinched a World Championship before the season's end. But he's absolutely right on it, hungry as a dog. That's something that will definitely, all the other teams and drivers will be taking into the winter as well. So Max P5 ahead of Pierre Gasly, really good again in the Alpine Renault. It's almost become expected now for Pierre to be in Q3 and to be going as well as he is. Let's hope he has a decent race. I mean, he faded very quickly in Qatar, and reliability is usually an issue at Alpine Renault as well, isn't it? But let's hope it does well. In the other car, Jack Doohan making his debut in Formula One looked pretty good in FP3, and he wasn't far away from Pierre the first run in Q1, but he went out very, very late in Q1. And we should bring the Lewis Hamilton story into this as well. Went out very late, crossed the line like 5 seconds before the flag. Lewis crossed the line like 2 seconds before the flag. A lot of traffic. Lawson, Sonoda, Magnussen, lots of guys there in front of them. And Jack did a 24.1, Lewis did a 23.9 in all that traffic. And in addition, Lewis caught some debris from Magnussen, who was off the curb trying to make way for him. And so Lewis didn't get out of Q1. Just so disappointing for him in his last Grand Prix for Mercedes to be starting back of the grid. I suppose the only consolation is that Charles Leclerc's down there as well. But it's not really a consolation, is it? But when you think of Lewis's career, and when you think about what he's done for Mercedes, with Mercedes, it's very sad that this happened in qualifying today. But there's a bit of an irony there, is there not? What is it with Abu Dhabi and Lewis Hamilton? Let's hope that he has a good race tomorrow, because at least, he's had a terrible qualifying session. There's half a chance things might go half reasonably for him tomorrow. So George Russell, P7 for Mercedes, in a difficult car. Similarly difficult, the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso, P8. P9, Valtteri Bottas, superb performance in the Sauber. Sad that this is his last race. I've been saying for a while that I think Sauber could do a lot worse than to keep him, have maybe a young guy in the other car, but to keep him there for continuity. But no, they've got Nico Hülkenberg, and of course they've got Gabriel Bortoleto in the other car now. So this is the last Grand Prix, probably the last Grand Prix ever for Valtteri Bottas. And what a thing to qualify P9 in Q3 in a Sauber. Really, really good for him. Happy for him. And big smile on his face, as you would expect with Valtteri. Very balanced guy. And rhetorical questions on his helmet. What next? Yeah, well, let's hope he finds something good and we can still enjoy watching him drive, because he's done a very good job over the years in Formula One. And then finally, Sergio Perez, again, made it through to Q3. Wonder of wonders. In what is a difficult car. So that's quite a good little ending of the season for Sergio Perez. Max Verstappen 22.9, Sergio Perez 23.2, both in Q3. Not bad at all from Sergio's point of view. And on that note, here's the second part of the chat I had recently with Mario Isola, the director of motorsport for Pirelli. This is a slightly shorter section, but it's talking about the way Pirelli are going in 2025, what we can expect from the cars in 2025, and what we can expect in 2026. Big unanswered questions there for sure. So over to you, Mario.
So we have simulation coming from the teams that are telling us that there is a further step in this direction. Probably not as big as in the past, as last year, for example. We have a new construction with a better durability that we assessed in our indoor tests. We decided to review the compound range in order to have compounds that are better spaced in the range. At the moment, we have C1 and C2, the two hardest compounds that are a bit too close. Then there is a big step between the C2 and the C3. So we wanted to reposition the C2 more in the center between C1 and C3. And we wanted also to homologate a C6 that is a super soft compound, mainly for street circuits, because we have more and more street circuits in the calendar compared to the past, and sometimes we need more flexibility in the range with softer compounds available. At the moment, it works that we can homologate as many compounds as we want, so it's not a problem to homologate 6 compounds. But we cannot introduce new compounds during the season, so we prefer to homologate an additional compound now and maybe not use it if it's not necessary, rather than not homologating, and then we don't have the possibility to add anything.
And 2026, how's that looking at the moment?
Difficult. because we have data, we have simulations from the FIA and from the teams. We have an idea on the performance of the 2026 cars that is changing, because some details on the regulation are still not defined. So the cars are, let's say, changing depending on the moment. The real issue is that we don't have a representative mule car, because the modified cars to fit these new tires are the current cars or cars from previous 2-3 years. That means the aero package is the same we have now, not the new one. We don't have an active aerodynamic package. We don't have a car that is lighter. We don't have a car with a new power unit with more electric power compared to the past. So we can also only imagine what is going to happen and simulate it, as we did, for example, a few years ago when we were developing the 18-inch tire. But when we run on track, the data collected with the mule cars are better than nothing, but not really representative.
But are you expecting the cornering loads to be even higher in 26?
Not higher, but not much lower as it was supposed to be at the beginning of the development. So straight line speeds higher. It was clear since the beginning, but cornering speeds, if they want to keep a level of performance that is not too far from the current cars, cannot be much lower than now.
Straight line speeds higher, that's an interesting one, I imagine, from your point of view. Is there anything you can do in terms of the shape of the tire?
We obviously work on what we call standing waves, that are these, say, the formation of the sidewall that you have in high speed, simulating the higher speeds. But we have indoor machines that are able to go up to 450 kph. So I believe that we have quite a good, still a good margin. If we talk about pure speed, it is also true that they achieve the speed with lower loads because of the active aero package. So they have a higher speed but lower vertical load. In cornering, they still have high speed and high load. So it's slightly different because the floor is different and the generation of downforce is different, but still quite high. It's not true that we can expect from the 2026 cars to have loads that are 30% lower than this year. I don't believe it.
Finally, Mario, your life, you still doing your great work behind the scenes with the fire department?
Still doing that.
Brilliant.
Now Christmas time is close, so I just got a message from my colleagues when I'm available for my shifts. I have to reply giving some availabilities. It's okay. I mean, I spend most of my year traveling the world for my job. It's good that I can give them a bit of support when I'm at home. So I'm planning to have some night shifts during Christmas holidays.
Well, congratulations. A big thanks from the Formula One community to you for that. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Finally, a reminder that I got this special arrangement now with Amalgam and their Red Bull collection. The details are in the description below this video, but just a reminder of how exquisite these models are. I mean, they're almost impossible to resist. That's all I can say. So I'm doing all I can to try and ease the financial burden a little bit. So there's a special code there you can use to give you a little bit of an advantage. Anyway, that's it for Abu Dhabi Saturday. Big thanks to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and of course to Track Ninja, and to you, the viewer, for watching. Hope you're enjoying it all. See you tomorrow. Well, it was a McLaren-Mercedes day in the end. Lando Norris putting a wonderful full stop at the end of the year for his team from the pole, winning the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, making it look relatively easy. Pressure for most of the race from Carlos Sainz's Ferrari, but whenever it came to traffic, whenever it came to just needing to pull out a little bit of a gap, Lando always had margin. Drove superbly, no mistakes, just really, really good. It was nail-biting, though, for the McLaren team on the pit wall, because at the first corner, Oscar Piastri was basically eliminated from the proceedings in a collision with Max Verstappen. Max, quite correctly, I think, got the penalty here, 10 seconds. It was definitely Max that caused the incident, but let's just talk it through, because he made a great start. He went down the inside. Oscar left a bit of a gap going into turn one, I guess assuming that Max wasn't going to try anything, but Max did, and he was safely down the inside Oscar Piastri, effectively looking at second place, but then started to run a little bit wide from the curb apex, as he would, as they do, hit Oscar. They both pirouetted. Lovely 360 by Max, kept going in the midfield. Oscar was out in the boonies on the outside, rejoined at the back of the field, and then got a 10-second penalty of his own for running into the back of Franco Colapinto when he was trying to scythe his way through the field, making up for that. I say making up for that because although Max got the penalty, there is a little bit of a thing here again about the McLaren pit wall, because the role that Oscar had to play today, quite clearly, in my view, was to support Lando Norris, who was on the pole, make sure he didn't get anywhere near Lando going into the first corner. And then above all, not to be hit by anybody else in case he was needed to back up anything that Lando was not able to do. He needed to be right at the front of this race. And there was no point actually enforcing the issue with Max Verstappen once he saw Max down the inside. In my view, a Niki Lauda type response would have been ease the steering, give Max room, settle into third place behind Max, and then we'll see what happens as the race develops. Even if he'd finished third, it would have been a nice belt and braces result for McLaren-Mercedes. As it was, he was at the back, and for a while it was just Lando out in front. And of course, if Lando had had a problem, Ferrari would have won the championship, because they were running effectively 1-2 if Lando had had a problem. They finished second and third. Charles Leclerc, great drive up from the back of the grid to finish third. Anyway, big hats off and congratulations to McLaren-Mercedes for that Constructors Championship. A superb win for them, a superb result, really, when you think of where they were, even at the start of the year, let alone where they were 2 years ago, at the beginning of this category in Formula One, this aero package in Formula One. And yeah, great performance. Again, and I got to say it, I still think Lando should have been nearer Max in the closing stages of the championship had they managed things differently. He had a great car for the second half of the year, virtually every weekend. And it was kind of a shame for the championship and for Formula One that it was decided as early, the Drivers' Championship that is, by Vegas. But it was certainly great to have the constructors going through to Abu Dhabi. Ferrari did a very good job today. Carlos Sainz finished second. He was pretty near Lando after the pit stops from mediums to hards. He was within 2 seconds of Lando. It was never a moment when McLaren can say, yeah, we got this race sewn up. Carlos was there. But as I say, Lando was able to eke out an advantage whenever he really needed to, even though he lost fastest lap to Kevin Magnussen, who was on soft tyres, 2 sets of soft tyres, and went ridiculously quick to take the fastest lap away from McLaren. I wonder, with the Ferrari engine in the back of the Haas, that was another thing that should have been talked about before the race. I guess it probably was, but not much they could do about it, of course. But then when the traffic came later in the race and it looked as if Carlos maybe went over a bit of debris, particularly sector 3 where there are lots of corners, slow, medium speed corners, he started to lose 3-4 tenths a lap just on that sector. He got it back again towards the end of the race when Lando was driving with margin, but that was a telling moment of the race, I think. And indeed, when McLaren were able to get on the radio to Lando and say, look, if we want to bring you in for a new set of tyres at the end, do you still think you can be able to do it? And of course, the answer was yes. And they were just thinking maybe we might need fastest lap or something like that, I guess. So yeah, great win for Lando Norris. And it was interesting, wasn't it, at the end, that it was Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. Here am I, I've been banging on about short corners and going in early on the brakes and shortening the corner the way Max does, the way Lewis does, the way Charles Leclerc does, and the way Oscar occasionally does these days. But it was the two longer corner drivers, Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, within the sphere of the teams in which they drive, relative to their teammate, I guess you could say, who finished first and second in this last Grand Prix of 2024. And there was a bit of an ending with music for Mercedes as well, for Lewis Hamilton in particular, because he finished fourth, passing George Russell on the last lap of the race. I mean, this was, I guess there's an irony there, I think, back to 21 and how he got passed by Max on the last lap, but I don't think there's any parallel there really. On this occasion, Lewis was on the medium tyre, he started on the hard, he was on the medium, the only one out on the mediums at the back end of the race, and George was on the hard tyre, so Lewis had the big advantage. But he did pull back 16, 17 seconds on his teammate and got him on that last lap. I don't know whether George kind of thought, yeah, it'd be kind of nice to let Lewis beat me in this last race or not. And Lewis was really good. Yeah, he wasn't far away from setting fastest lap, apart from the Kevin Magnussen soft tyre thing. And that will do a bit more for his confidence than where he was on Saturday night when he was very lost in that car. On the hard tyre at the start of the race, he was struggling again. I have no pace. It's kind of, in inverted commas, quote from Lewis Hamilton, was kind of his catchphrase for the entire year, really. But that's what he was saying at the beginning of this first phase of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But he was comfortable and he had grip and he had balance in the back end of the race. And for sure he would have enjoyed catching George and passing George and taking that P4. Not that P4 means very much, of course, but the two Mercedes finishing nose to tail as they crossed the line in P4, P5. George Russell in 5th place, ahead of Max Verstappen, who of course served his 10-second penalty before the pit stop in the pit lane, and who finished 6th, drove well through the field to finish 6th. Pretty quick when he was in free air, would have been up there 2nd or 3rd, probably would not have beaten Lando in this race in a straight fight, but certainly would have been probably ahead of Carlos Sainz, I think. Anyway, he was 6th for Red Bull. And 7th, really good, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine Renault. Made it very difficult for George Russell in the early stages to get past and was consistently quick throughout the race. Excellent result for Pierre. Great way for him to finish the year with that team. We've had that fabulous result from Brazil, but ever since then, the team has looked very strong and getting better all the time in terms of having a sweet spot with the car that works in all different conditions on different types of circuits. Really, really good. Nico Hülkenberg, 8th in the Haas Ferrari. A few dramas, but great to see him in the points again. Great for that team to be in the points again. What a season they have had. Ahead of Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Disappointing last 2/3 of the season for Aston Martin, but Fernando driving well still and in the top 10. And finally, Oscar Piastri worked his way up to P10 to get that last point. So there we are, a great win for Lando Norris in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, specifically for him as an individual. A great win for McLaren in the Constructors Championship, a deserved win for McLaren in the Constructors Championship, you've got to say that. Ferrari P2 in the Constructors table at the end, but a great drive by Carlos Sainz. In many ways, that's probably the most poignant result, I think, of the day. Here's Carlos Sainz putting in another copybook drive for Ferrari, his last race for the Scuderia before he has to go to Williams. I say has to because by rights he should be in that car for 2025 and beyond because he's done a fabulous job, but that's not the way things are. Ferrari have decided to replace him with Sir Lewis Hamilton, and that will be, of course, a massive thing for Formula One, a massive thing here in Italy. It was quite interesting. As you probably know, I've been filming all 3 videos here from Monza, where I've been present at the Pirelli Monza Rally show. Pirelli's signing off from the World Rally Championship, But what an atmosphere here today. The crowd, packed grandstands here as they were doing the runoffs between Thierry Neuville and Sébastien Ogier and Adrian Formeau. Really, really impressive to watch. Lovely to watch handbrake turns and slides and four-wheel drifts as a counterpoint to Formula One, but nonetheless watching Formula One. And the point I'm making is here at Monza, lots and lots of rally fans watching the Grand Prix, of course, cheering for Ferrari, living on every moment of what was going on with Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, and cheering every time there was a pass. Yeah, it's quite good to be here to watch all that. But as I say, a sad moment, I think, for the Carlos Sainz fans, because he's done a great job at Ferrari and he's leaving the team. But here, I cannot imagine what it's going to be like when Lewis Hamilton is here next year at Monza in the red overalls, driving for Ferrari. And I wonder where we'll be then. I wonder what state the championship will be in, whether Red Bull again are leading the championship, whether McLaren now are on a roll and they'll continue all the way with that momentum into 2025, through to the end of 25, whether Ferrari will start to win some serious races. What will be happening? Where will Carlos Sainz be in the Williams? Another question, of course. So many unanswered questions. Bit of testing coming up in Abu Dhabi, but of course the real testing for 2025 begins in the new year in Bahrain. So it's been wonderful to be here. It's been a great 24 Formula One season, I think. As Mario Isola said yesterday in our interview, or on Friday actually, the first part, it's been a great year for Formula One in terms of unexpected results, in terms of tension on the pit wall, tension on the racetrack, and surprising results, and a number of teams all finding a sweet spot that perhaps they can't replicate, but nonetheless that is making it very interesting in Formula One. In theory, I think in 25 more teams will find that bigger sweet spot, and it will be even more competitive than ever. That's the theory of it. But it may not be that way, of course. Well, that is the beauty of Formula One. So I sign off now by saying a big thank you to you, the viewer, for watching and supporting this channel. Obviously to my partners here, to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and to Track Ninja, all of whom have made this channel possible. We're not going away. Between now and the start of next year, we'll be doing a lot more live streams. We'll be doing some special videos. And don't forget, we're out now on an audio platform as well, and you can listen to us in a variety of different forms. So big thanks to everyone, and have a great winter. We'll be back again very soon, but in the meantime, take care.